Hi everyone, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all some of the books that I've read recently. So let's just get right to it. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Cantoras by Carolina de Robertis. I'm going to be reading the summary of this book because I literally have no idea how to describe it, and I'm sure the summary will make more sense than I would trying to explain it. In 1977 Uruguay, a military government crushed political dissent with ruthless force. In this environment, where the rights of everyday people are under attack, homosexuality is a dangerous transgression to be punished. And yet Romina, Flaca, Anita, Paz, and Malena, five cantoras, women who sing, somehow miraculously find one another. Together, they discovered an isolated, nearly uninhabited cape, Cabo Polonio, which they claim as their secret sanctuary. Over the next 35 years, their lives move back and forth between Cabo Polonio and Montevideo, the city they call home. As they return, sometimes together, sometimes in pairs, with lovers in tow or alone. And throughout, again and again, the women will be tested by their families, lovers, society, and one another as they fight to live authentic lives. Anyway, I rated this book 5 stars. This was a phenomenal novel. It was really beautifully written. I found the prose gorgeous, incredible. I read this as an audiobook and I thought the writing really came across even in the audiobook, which I think is something that doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I find it difficult to notice the writing style of authors when I'm listening to an audiobook versus when I'm reading it physically. But in this one, it just really stood out and it was incredible. What I do have to note though is that this book is definitely for people who are character-driven readers. This novel has close to no plot. Literally, you're just following the lives of these women across the years and the relationships that they develop with one another. If you want something more exciting than that, this is not the book for you. And ironically, although it's a character-driven novel, I did feel like the characters could have used a bit more distinction between one another. I found that sometimes it was easy to blur them together. So although I rated this 5 stars, I do understand that this book is not going to be for everyone, and even character-driven readers might not fully enjoy this novel. I don't know who to recommend it to, but I do think it's an incredible novel, really well written, and I feel like it's one of those kinds of novels that if it's for you, it's for you, and you will read it and you will get it and you will appreciate it for what it is. But if it's not for you, you're just kind of probably going to be bored and just want to get it over with. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Lady Hotspur by Tessa Gratton. This novel is a spin-off from The Queens of Innis Lear, but this one takes place around 100 to 200 years after The Queens of Innis Lear, so you don't really have to read that first novel in order to pick up this one. The reading experience will just be very much enhanced if you do, because a lot of the side characters that play an undercurrent, very slight role in this, but important at the same time, do appear in The Queens of Innis Lear and resurface in Lady Hotspur. So essentially this is a retelling of Henry IV by William Shakespeare, and in this we're following another power struggle for the crown. In The Queens of Innis Lear it's something similar as well. There's a different power struggle going on here because the crown has just been usurped and the young woman that was originally gonna get that crown as the heir isn't gonna get it. So it's the power struggle between the usurpers and this young woman that wants to get her crown back. I rated this book 4.5 stars, and mostly that's because I just really enjoy Tessa Gratton's writing style. I find the way she tells stories extremely compelling, but I totally see how this might not work for other readers. One of the main things about this is that this is a really chunky novel, and it takes a long time for anything to happen. Actually, this novel, I'm pretty sure, has a peak point in the plot very close to the end when you have like 100 or about 200 pages left, and this is like a 600-page book or more. So that kind of storytelling isn't for everyone. Not everyone's gonna be okay with you just kind of following these stories and this political drama and intrigue between these countries and these people who want the throne. Another irony in this book is the characters. I really enjoyed some of them and I really enjoyed some of their relationships, but other relationships felt very strange and they didn't quite make sense. The author was trying to tell you that these characters had this very intense connection and I just didn't see it. For example, one of the main characters, Prince Hal, she's like super in love with Lady Hotspur, but it doesn't make sense because you have in the beginning insta-lust, like they're very horny for each other, and that's fine. But then as the story progresses, they keep telling you that they're so in love with one another, but you don't really get to see that. All you see is like scenes of them either being horny with one another or arguing with one another. So I'm like, where is this deep love? Because I don't see it at all. On the other hand, another of the relationships that I really enjoyed was between Lady Hotspur and Connolly. Their friendship, because I will call it a friendship, I'm not gonna spoil what happens in the book, but to me that's only a friendship and nothing more. But the point is, their relationship, I found it very interesting and engaging, and I really enjoyed the dynamic between the two of them. So I have those contradictions where some relationships I'm like, that was shit, and other relationships I'm like, I really enjoyed this. Ultimately, I personally really enjoyed this novel. It's what I've gotten used to reading from Tessa Gratton, and so it's stuff that makes me more than happy. The next book I'm going to be talking about is God's Grave by Jay Kristoff. This is a sequel of Nevernight, and in Nevernight we're following our main character Mia, who is a female assassin. She goes to an assassin school in the first novel in order to train and be able to avenge the death of her family. In this one we're following the aftermath of that. I'm not going to go too much into detail just to avoid spoilers. I rated this book 4 stars. I had a really good time listening to the audiobook of this sequel. I've had the sequel on my shelf for a year, 2 years, I don't know. I've had it for a while. Even though I really enjoyed Nevernight, I just never got around to reading this one because I really procrastinate on picking up sequels of fantasy novels. It takes me so long to get through them that I just resist. I just resist continuing the series because I know it'll take me a while to get through the book. But I found the audiobook of this really helped me to speed through it, and I found the audiobook narrator to be really enjoyable to listen to. So I flew through this novel despite its length. It doesn't look super lengthy here, but it's around 400 something pages and has really small font, so that was an accomplishment. Anyway, the main reason I enjoyed this novel is because I really enjoy the writing style of Jay Kristoff. I enjoy his humor, I enjoy the way he picks language, so I just thoroughly had a good time reading this. The other reason was that Jay Kristoff gave me the perfect kind of fuel to get me to read a book. One of the perfect kinds of fuels for me is giving me a character I thoroughly hate so I can read the book in order to hate him. So that happened to me with Furion. I could not stand that man. He got on my nerves, and that drove me to keep reading because I was like, is Mia finally gonna fucking kick this man's ass? Because I'm ready. I'm ready for it to happen. And it's just great. It's just great. I think the major downfall of this book is that it gets pretty repetitive. Mia goes through like the same kind of task over and over again, and it feels unnecessary. It could have been a bit more creative and different each time, but it was kind of monotonous. I didn't experience it that way personally, but I've seen people that think it's way too repetitive. Overall, I definitely had a good time reading this. The last book I'm going to be talking about is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I buddy read this with Anna from Books and BS, and it was a really fun time to do that. This is like my minimum 3rd time reading this book. I'm pretty sure it's been more towards the 5th time I've read this book. So that's just to let you know that I'm definitely a Six of Crows stan, a Six of Crows hoe, but I think that's pretty obvious from the fact that I have multiple copies of this series on my bookshelf. I think that has been established. In this novel, we're following 6 criminals who are hired to break someone out of what is called the Ice Court. This person is really wanted because they created a drug that could really affect how this world and these people live. And I'm not going to explain it further than that because most people on BookTube have heard about this, so there's no point on me going too much into detail. But basically, I really enjoyed rereading this novel. Once again, I really adore Leigh Bardugo's writing style. She writes the the best dialogue. I think she's fucking hilarious. I love the banter and the dynamic between the characters. It really comes out in the way that characters talk to one another, and I find that very compelling and very entertaining. I'm also definitely a fan of how Leigh Bardugo develops characters. There's a lot of flashbacks in this book, and I find that those flashbacks are really good at building the characters and showing you who they are and how they respond to the world around them. As a heist novel though, I have read that this is a pretty slow one. It gets interrupted too much and there's not as intense high stakes going on as there should be. Since I read books for characters and not for anything at all to do with the plot, I really enjoyed this. Every time I read it, I fall in love with the characters all over again, and this book just consistently stays as one of my favorites. Do I think it's perfect? No, but it's perfect for me, and that's enough. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Please comment down below any books that you've read recently that you've really enjoyed. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to follow me on any of my social media, I will leave links to that down below in the description. But for now, see you next time.